Hi, I'm Zibby Owens, and I am the host of this podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. I am also a newly minted USA Today bestselling author of the novel Blank. I've created a whole community of book lovers around this podcast, a publishing company, reading retreats, a bookstore, and more. Learn more at zibbymedia.com or follow me on social at Zibby Owens or join the community at Zibby Readers. Francine Prose is the author of 1974, A Personal History. Francine is the author of 22 works of fiction, including the highly acclaimed The Vixen, Mr. Monkey, the New York Times bestseller Lovers at the Chameleon Club, Paris 1932, A Changed Man, which won the Dayton Literary Peace Prize, and Blue Angel, which was a finalist for the National Book Award. Her works of nonfiction include the highly praised Anne Frank, the book, The Life, The Afterlife, and the New York Times bestseller Reading Like a Writer, which has become a classic. The recipient of numerous grants and honors, including a Guggenheim and a Fulbright, a Director's Fellow at the Center for Scholars and Writers at the New York Public Library, Francine is a former president of PEN America Center and a member of the American Academy of Arts and Letters and the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. She is a distinguished writer in residence at Bard College. Welcome, Francine. Thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books to discuss 1974, A Personal History. Welcome.
Thank you.
How was it for you writing this book? What was this like?
It was really hard. It was really hard because I'd really never written anything about me, like travel pieces with your kids. It's not really about you. So, and as I was writing it, I thought, oh, now I know I've been like hiding behind fictional characters in novels for years and years and years because, and I wrote a bunch of different drafts. And also looking back at yourself as a 20-year-old, it was terrifying. It was terrifying. And I wrote one draft, and my husband, who's a very good reader, said, you really have to like that girl more that you were. You really just have to not be like, how stupid I was, right? Like, why did she do that stuff? And so that was the hard part. I mean, the other one, writing is writing, and it was fun, like putting the sentences together and changing this word and that word. I mean, that part is always the fun part. But just kind of trying to make a coherent story out of it. And also remembering, there were whole, it just so happened that whole big chunks of it were just like indelibly engraved in my mind, after a long time. So that was like taking dictation. But then I had to think, how did I get there? And how did this happen? And, et cetera, et cetera. And then the historical political parts. I mean, I don't know if people know, but there's this thread running through it, which was that I was living in San Francisco in 1974, and my sort of boyfriend for a little while was this guy named Tony Russo, who was the guy that talked Ellsberg into leaking the Pentagon Papers, Xeroxing, leaking, blah, blah, blah. And we would mostly just drive around San Francisco, and he would tell me stories about his life and Vietnam and, blah, 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 blah. But, there were things that were just absolutely engraved. I mean, after, what is it? 50 years, right? I can remember that he had this weird habit of ordering sausages and blueberry pie and eating in this cafeteria, this kind of, skeezy cafeteria in the Tenderloin. And he was saying, oh, it's like, he said, my friend, when he worked for the Rand Corporation, they couldn't have Chinese food for lunch. So his friend said, this is the closest you're going to get. So details like that stayed in my mind, and they were easy and sort of fun to write about. But again, like the past, there are all these different parts that were happening at once. So there was that, and then, being a writer, and my novels were starting to come out. I mean, and I was a kid, really stupid. And then deciding how to end it, how far in the future to bring it, and so forth.
How did you decide that?
It just had to do with, there's this whole other thing running through the novel, which is about Alfred Hitchcock's film Vertigo, which, is filmed in San Francisco. And it's like, I have this obsessive fascination with that film. I've seen it like 15 times. I just over and over. And also something about driving around San Francisco really made me feel like that film and think about that film, which is also about obsession, which is kind of what the book is about too. But even though, San Francisco 1974 looked nothing like 1958 when Hitchcock was, but I was still like running that movie in my head all the time. So it ends with going to see the film at Bard College where I teach with my granddaughters. And somehow the music and San Francisco kind of brought it all back to me, brought the whole thing back to me. And then I thought, oh, okay, I want to write about this. So, and it was it was Vertigo, but they had like a full orchestra doing the Bernard Herrmann score. I mean, it was so intense. It was so intense. So,
Wow.
so that's kind of what kicked it off. Yeah.
How did you decide you had lots of sort of short, punchy chapters where you keep us here and they're almost like little scenes, little vignettes. Did you decide to do it that way, or that's just the way the story came to you?
Well, I was like, okay, that's as much as I want to say about that. Because they're like
just ran out of coffee.
because they're little stories. Like they're little interpolated stories in there. Like, there's for a while, I have this other boyfriend that we go to Mexico and eat mushrooms and, blah, blah, blah. But I didn't have that much to say about it. It was just part of giving the general feeling of what that time was, so.
Actually, you had, there was a passage I wanted to read. Is that okay, from the boyfriend?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I don't often read passages about sex on this podcast, but I just had to read this passage. Is that okay? Maybe I'll embarrass you.
Yeah, go for it.
You said, I wish I could say that it was the kind of sex that is the answer to every question, the gift for which we wait, the fireworks ignited by every spark of curiosity, affection, admiration, every laugh, every glimpse of a body part, every twinge of desire. I wish I could say it was the kind of sex that makes you think that from now on life will never be the same, the kind of sex that makes you wonder how someone could know what you have wanted all your life, what you will always want. I wish I could say it was the kind of sex that makes you think, now I understand why we have bodies. I wish I could say it was the kind of sex that makes you think, this is why people leave their happy homes. This is why they blow up their lives, to feel like this just once or just once more. I wish I could say it was the kind of sex that makes someone say, I want to have your child. I wish I could say it was the kind of sex that makes you think how brilliant nature is for attaching the survival of the species to something that feels like this. I wish I could say it was the kind of sex that makes you stop thinking, but I can't say any of that because it wasn't.
I know. Well, writing about bad sex by writing about good sex, it's like, but again, it's so funny you chose that passage because John Guare, the playwright, who's been super supportive of the book, said, we went to his house for dinner and he said, I love the book. There's this passage I want to read you. And it was that passage. And I went like,
you're kidding.
No, it was that passage. And I went like, no, it's okay. You're right. Like, I know what it is. Like, I don't want to, but yeah, it was a hard thing to write about, in a way, bad sex is easier to write about than good sex because bad sex is like, like Blue Angel, there's really bad sex in it. And good sex is impossible because the language has been just stolen by pornography and whatever. But and also that passage would have been awful if it didn't end with like this. It wasn't there. It was. It was. If it wasn't there, I wish I could say if it was just. It was. It was just like unbearable, but it wasn't. It really wasn't.
Oh, how do the people in your life, how have they so far taken this book, and have you shown it to anyone, and did you have to clear it with anybody?
Well, the lawyers at Harvard like picked up a couple things but they were very easy to change, a little phrase that they want to take it out and hear that. I gave it to my son to read, who's my younger son, who's 40 in his early 40s. And he's a very good reader. He's a musician, but he's a very good reader. And he said, it took him a long time. He was mostly reading on his phone, of course, traveling. And he said, I found it really scary. And I said, why? Because mom took drugs and had sex. And, he goes, no, because I have daughters.
Mm.
Right. And his girls are like 17 and 13. So it's like that, and I got, okay, he really got that part of it. Like, what it's, I don't know, maybe you sailed through it, Zibby. I don't know. But being a young woman in your 20s is not easy. I mean, it certainly wasn't then. And
I would not say I sailed through it. Those words have never come out of my mouth.
Well, that's what you want for people, but it just doesn't, it's not set up that way. So yeah. And my husband has been, as I said, has been like an amazing reader all along. I don't know. I mean, I haven't heard from my ex-husband about it. And he's, I really tried to be fair. And it was ridiculous to like get married your senior year in high school. That was just an insane thing to do, 1968, 69. So, but no, I think it's okay. And I talked to a couple of the people just to get, the people like my roommates in San Francisco. I talked to him and, so forth. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Well, we'll see. I mean, that's, another reason for not writing about yourself is it's not about you. So.
Well, I think that it was so interesting that that we can be so critical of ourselves, so much so that it would ruin someone else's experience of reading about the younger versions of ourselves. Like, that's such good advice to just go a little easier on our characters when they are in fact us, right? And go a little easier on ourselves in general.
I know. No, and it really, I mean, that's so weird about the parts of your life being disconnected in a certain way, or you become different people. But having sympathy for because really, if one of my granddaughters was in that situation, riding around San Francisco with this guy, I'm like no, like don't do it. But there I was, like, completely in it. So
I mean, let's blame the prefrontal cortex development. It was not your fault.
I know. Well, I know. I think that's probably right. I think I really do think has a lot to do with, the biology of certain stages of your life.
So now that you've written about yourself, do you feel like that's good, I finished, and now I can't wait to get back to fiction? Like, how do you, yes?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And also, I don't know, it's sort of like, there are other parts of my life that, I don't know. I mean, that it was so dramatic in a way. I mean, that part was so dramatic. And then, as I say in the book, at 4 years after that book, my first my son was born, and things like quieted down quite a lot, right? As they still are. But it wasn't, and people write wonderful books about motherhood and young motherhood. And, there are things that the things I think about that time that, I might, but I don't know. No. It's nice to make things up. It's so you feel so clear and clean about it. It's not me. It's not me.
Do you have another book in the hopper, like something you're working on now?
Yeah, I'm working on a novel that's set in England in 1857.
You sound really excited about that.
I am. Yeah. No, it's really it's strange. It's a super strange book. It's just a super strange book, and I don't know. I just finished. I mean, I'm sort of finished. And I don't, I'm still at this. I mean, my husband liked it, but he's the only one that's read it. So, I mean, that's the stage it's in. So I don't know. I mean, it may be completely unintelligible for all I know. It's like, what was she thinking? But,
So what is the secret to continually writing fiction that keeps people's interest, that forges a career, all of that? What is the secret sauce?
I just really like doing it. I like doing it. I mean, there are times where it's like really hard and I hate it and I hate myself and my life for thinking that this was like a reasonable thing to do or that I could do it or something. But when it's like those days when it's going well and like some idea pops into my head or I get the nerve to say something that I've wanted to talk about, I go, okay, I mean, I like gardening too. I mean, I like hanging out, I mean, there are other things I do, but I don't know. I would really miss it if I wasn't doing it. I mean, if I had something to do. Well,
I love that. It's so great. I mean, it's so simple, but so obvious. Like, to be a writer, you have to love it. You have to.
It helps. Which isn't, again, I don't want to sell it like it's, completely false advertising. There are days when it's just horrible. It's just
Right.
a horrible thing to do. I mean, really horrible, and always hard work, and always harder work than you think it's going to be. I mean, just, in a way, the memoir was easy because I knew how the order in which things had happened, but it was hard because I had to figure out how to put the moving pieces together. So, and that's work, I mean, it's like, and fiction too, you have to know a certain amount about these characters and what they're doing at a certain, like Lovers at a Chameleon Club. I had a whiteboard where I just put the years in and all the characters just to figure out how old they were, at the different times. So, and people don't think about that. They think, oh, you have an idea, super creative, and you just like have some inspiration. So, but you're like, a friend of mine once said it's like being a grocer when they used to like add up the numbers on the paper bag. I mean, it's like that's part of the job.
Yeah, got to know a little bit of math. Might as well pay attention in school.
Oops. Well, yeah, that always a problem. So.
Amazing. Well, is there anything that you're really hoping that people, aside from wanting to protect their grandchildren, get out of this book?
Yeah, I'm not telling them how to do that. I don't know. I mean, I think, well, I had it was so weird to write in a certain way. And I really didn't know how I felt about it. And so I let it go for a long time. I mean, I didn't open the page proofs. I mean, when the page proofs came at first, I was saying like, I feel like I got this package of anthrax. And if I open it, but then I did the audiobook, which I'd never done before. And it sounds like narcissistic, but I kind of started to love the way the story moved, like just the way the story moved. And I was interested. And also I actually cared about this girl in the story who happened to be me, but not in a way that, blah, blah. So I just hope people will have that experience. And also I think, it is sort of about how the 60s turned into the 70s. And we're living now in something worse than the 70s, but it's not like the 60s, that's for sure. But, to live in a time when you really thought like things are going to get better, like we're going to figure out a solution to all these problems, and the, war's going to stop, and we're all going to, we really believe these things, just to get political for a second, Roe v. Wade came in 73. It's like, yeah, like, and now here we are. So I just feel like that history, to be able to present it in a way that, well, I don't mean to diminish it, but goes down easy in a certain way. Like learning the book, you learn a certain amount of the history of that time, but it's not like taking a class in it or something, or, having to take a test, on it. But it's there. And I think it's important. I'm always sort of, I teach, and it seems like the 70s and the 80s kind of dropped out of my college, undergraduates kind of just dropped out in a way, like they weren't paid, it wasn't paid a lot of attention to when they went to high school. But that was so, but it happened, and a lot of important things happened. So that too. Young girl, me, blah, blah. And then 1974. So is that what you had? I don't know.
Sounds good. It sounds great.
I don't think I should have let you do it, but yeah.
No, it's perfect. It's perfect. Francine, thank you so much for sharing your personal history with the rest of us. This is, by the way, the coolest cover ever. Don't you just love it?
The cover, a friend of my son's designed it, Danny Miller. He's not real. He's a designer. And, I've known him since he was like 8th grade. And I said, Danny, you ought to do like a book cover for me. And they did it. I love it.
I love
super
it.
Beautiful.
It's so cool. It's just so cool. Oh my gosh. Anyway, congratulations and good luck with your ex reading it and all the stuff. So
Thank you. Thank you, Zibby. Thanks so much.
No problem. All right. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
You too.
Thanks for listening to Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. If you love it, please leave a review and follow us on social at Zibby Owens and at Zibby Readers.